everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I'm your host, Randi-lee. On the show, we interview other writers and we talk about mental health from their personal journeys. If you have not already hit that like and subscribe button, go ahead, do that now so that you never miss an episode. Hello. So today with us, we have a returning guest. It's been quite some time, though, that she's been on the show. So welcome back, Marilyn.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me again.
You're so welcome. And so we're going live a little bit later today, if anybody's noticed, because we're a little bit of a time difference. And, you know, we got to account for that not everybody wants to wake up at the crack of dawn. Which I definitely would not want to either. Don't get me wrong. So tell us a little bit about who Marilyn is.
Well, that's a good question. It took me years to figure out a lot about that. I'm still looking for the answers. I was raised in domestic violence, mental illness, addictions, all kinds of addictions, and have all kinds of abuse growing up. And I did not know what was going on, but my life definitely was going down the tubes, and I just felt totally lost and very fearful, walked in fear, guilt, and shame for most of my life until I was in the 40s. And I actually had a bottom, you might call, where I said, finally, God, please tell me, help me. I really don't want to die, because the doctors, because of my anxiety, the doctors gave me prescriptions, which I got addicted to. And I ended up in treatment where I found out one drink of alcohol and one pill is 6 times the effect. So that made the mental illness even worse. I was raised in it and I was making it worse. So things got pretty hairy. My husband, ex-husband, he's gone now, tried to kill me several times, and I tried to get out of it several times by suicide. So I was a pretty sick cookie. And when I got to treatment, the doctor there said that I was in the last stages of alcoholism, because a pill is just a dry form of alcohol chemically, I found out. And I was in the last stages of alcoholism, and I was going to die if I took any prescriptions or picked up any alcohol. It would be a death sentence. So I have not had a drink of alcohol or any prescriptions from the doctor for 38 years at this point, and found a path of spirituality that brought me out of the mental illness. I don't want to die. I don't want to use all those things the doctors told me to do, because it actually made it worse. And that's what brought about the book I wrote, because in finding out in the treatment center what the prescriptions actually did to me, and how they worked in my system, and they were actually toxic. They don't tell people when you're taking them. These are like poison. And so I obviously had to get some education and understand what was happening. And over I'm a person who has a lot of curiosity. And I started digging into what prescriptions do and what is going on and where they came from and all that. And all that research actually led me into the book that I've just published, A Spark of Truth. So what I found out is that we have been lied to for centuries, literally. It wasn't just current.
Okay. So let's take this back. We're going to rewind a little bit. So I do remember last time you were on, we did talk about the addiction quite a bit more than other parts of your story. So I would like to talk about, because you brought it up, so hopefully you're okay with talking about it, trying to get out of a situation by suicide, because I don't remember that coming up in our previous conversation at all, because I feel like I definitely would remember that and we would have delved into that then, but I don't think we did. So I would really like to talk about that a little bit more, because we did talk quite a bit about the other side of things, the addiction and the prescriptions and stuff.
Well,
so
where
do you want to start with that?
Well, that's a very good question. I really didn't even know. I mean, I was I never grew up from the age of 3 emotionally while I was mentally ill. I had no clues about how to live life. I had no tools. So here I am, not only in this crazy family of mental illness and addictions, abuse, but I married what I was used to. And so I still am in that crazy. I thought you get married and have a happy life and a great family, and you leave the past behind. It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. What I've heard, just because you said, you didn't really grow up mentally since 3. I heard a saying once, probably on this show. Kitty, this is why I kick you out. And I heard a saying, anyways, that people who experience something traumatic, like an abusive household, are stunted at that age where it really started happening, and they're just kind of stuck at that age emotionally, because they weren't able to deal with it. That is until they do eventually deal with the traumatic incident. I don't know how true that is, but from talking to a lot of people and even going through therapy myself, I think there's some truth to that saying. So, emotionally or mentally, as you said it, age of 3, that's rough.
Well, I saw my dad, my real dad, beat up my mom when I was 3 years old.
That would do it.
And I wanted to save her. And I was afraid he would come after me and beat me up too. So as a little 3-year-old, I know today it wasn't the smartest thing to say, but I said, God, take me off the face of the earth because I don't want to be hurt. And that was like a death wish. I know today.
At 3.
At the age of 3, I said, God, take me off the face of the earth. I didn't want to be found to be beat up too. My biggest fear in recovery was this physical harm. Somebody would hurt me physically. And I also tightened up my muscles really, really small, like violin strings get tightened up on the violin.
Oh, yes.
Because I thought if I was smaller, he wouldn't find me.
Mm.
And so the combination has been I'm still coming out of the tight violin strings in my body being loosened up. But I found out in recovery I had a death wish. And so that's where the alcohol came in. I wasn't really drinking alcoholically, but when I did drink, I relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
And then the combination I found out in treatment with the pills, with the prescriptions, was a deadly combination.
Yes.
So I was always trying to be okay, but I didn't have any tools of how to live. So I just did the best I could. And when the trauma and domestic violent abusive situations turned up and he tried to kill me several times, I ended up with a broken tailbone one night because of that. I didn't do what he wanted me to do. And several other times when he got really angry, he tried to kill us in a car accident.
Oh my goodness.
Various things happened. Well, yeah, and while we were building a house, he sat on me in the kitchen floor and banged my head against the floor because I wasn't going to agree to. In those days, people didn't have cell phones. This was back in.
Yes.
and
it was probably attached to the wall too, right? Like not even cordless.
Well, that's right. Exactly. And in those days, when I was a child, 8 people were on a phone line. And gradually through progress, we actually, when I was married, we had down to 2 people on a party line. And I wouldn't agree to pay more money to have a private line. And he was upset. So he banged my head on the floor until I would agree to the party line. And when I overdosed on pills in desperation as he was chasing me around the house, he pounded, he sat on me and pounded my head on the floor and then took me to the hospital to have my stomach pumped. So I had all these things going on over time, and you're getting the top of the story. When I didn't have any answers. And one Thanksgiving, my son was sitting in the living room watching a particular movie for his schoolwork. It was a
Okay.
historical movie that the teacher wanted him to watch about the pioneers coming across the country to Washington State. That's where we live.
Okay.
But the television was bothering my husband, and he didn't want the television on. And so he came out in a rant and rave, and just it started with that, and it escalated to the point that I just couldn't handle it anymore. And so I went off to I taught at a school a mile away, so I drove over to the school and used that as my refuge in the nurse's room till I could kind of get my sense back together of, what am I going to do? So I kind of
Hmm.
calmed down, came home, put the turkey in the oven, and because it was Thanksgiving, and then
Okay.
he was still in a rage. So I left again, left the turkey cooking. So he was still in a rage. So I took the pills with me. I had a stash. In those days, the more pills you bought, you got a discount on the cost.
Oh.
So I could buy 90 pills for $1 instead of a month's supply, which is 30 pills for $1. That was the insurance price.
Yeah.
And so I was getting 90 pills for $1 in those days, and I had a nice collection. And this was still before treatment, of course. And
Yes.
so I took my pills with me because I thought I didn't want to go out, except that I couldn't handle the abuse anymore.
So I think that's a really good statement. I didn't want to go out, but I couldn't take the abuse anymore because from the amount of people I've talked to, and even my own experience, it's not that we ever want to leave. It's that whatever is happening, we just don't know how to make it stop, and we just need that to stop. Um, is sometimes it's, somebody else doing it to you. Sometimes it's our own brains over and over. Whatever it is, it's not necessarily that I mean, you said it, have a death wish, right? It's more that we just don't have any way else to get out.
Exactly. In fact,
Yeah.
when I was taking the pills, um, I said to God, I says, I know you're not, well, I'd been to church, right? I
Yeah.
know you're not supposed to do this, but whatever you have for me is better than what's at home. And so now the story changes, and I ended up passing out from the pills,
Mhm.
and angels showed up. And there were six angels, and they put silk cords around my hands and said, now you can't take any more pills. Well, in reality, I could still get my hand to my mouth, but in this scenario, I couldn't.
Yeah.
And they told me I was to go home and not take any more pills. And that's I'd already had an angel experience. I went off the cliff at the Grand Canyon, and they saved us in that situation. So
How
this
did you end up going off the cliff at the Grand Canyon?
Well, it was a trip. We took our children down to Disneyland, and it was wintertime. It was Christmas vacation, and he always planned a trip during holidays so we wouldn't have to be at my parents' house because he couldn't handle my mother.
Mm.
So that was our distraction, was to take a trip somewhere. And so we went to Disneyland with the kids, went into Mexico, and on the way back, and this is December just before New Year's,
Yeah.
and there was snow up in the Grand Canyon, and the Grand Canyon's 8,000 feet high, so there was a lot of snow. It was December, and so we were checking the radio for the weather reports, and the
Mhm.
weather had mentioned it would be 48 hours before snow in the canyon.
Okay.
Well, we got up, and all of a sudden the snow came 24 hours early, and we debated, is it safe to go up there? And my brain said, it's a national park. The roads should be clear.
I probably would have thought the same thing. I would have been like, "Oh, they must clear it. It's fine."
And so we were, and here we are on this road on the south part of the canyon coming into the main village part. And there's a car, the snow covered the road so you couldn't see the center lane, and there was a car coming down what you would call the middle of the road, and we didn't know if to go. His comment to me was, do we go to the right or do we go to the left? Well, I assumed there was a shoulder on the right. And when we decided to let this car coming at us, just let them have the road, we'll get out of the way. Well, so he took the right and there was no shoulder. And as he stepped on the brakes to go on the right, we slid in ice and went off the cliff up. And the interesting part, there was a sanding cart right behind us and saw the whole thing. So he wired for help immediately.
Oh, good. Yeah, because you wouldn't have even, like you said, have cell phones still, right?
Yeah, we had nothing like that. This was back in the 70s. And so the cell phone, the sander guy signaled for help. My husband sent me down the road to get to the souvenir store so we could get help. We hoped from a ranger. Well, they were on their way to help us when I'm going to the souvenir shop. And so I had to hitchhike to get help. So I hitchhiked back to the accident and the rangers were there. And he said, he's scratching his head and he said, we've never had an accident like this where everybody walked out without a scratch.
Wow. Well, that's good.
Well, the angels, and I knew this immediately, when we went off the edge of the cliff, all of a sudden the car started to turn upside down very, very slowly, like a slow camera. For an old movies used to have slow motion.
Yes.
And so we were, and I just knew 6 hands were on us, on the car. And I just knew that. I can't tell you how, but I felt it. And we were landed very easily and softly there happened to be a jutting out piece of land about 40 feet down from the side of the canyon. Now you tell me if that was a miracle. So we landed on this piece of land. We didn't go to the bottom. Mm-hmm. And so the ranger, called for a tow truck because we landed upside down, couldn't drive out of there. And it was the weekend of New Year's Eve, and I would teach her. I had to be back to teaching school, and there we're stranded. We're stranded at Flagstaff, which is the nearest town to get help for the car for the weekend, and then drove like mad when the car was ready on Monday to get me home on time to work. So that was the first experience I had with my angels. So when I tried suicide, they actually showed themselves.
Oh, okay.
And there were 5 angels, and it took me a long time to realize who the 6th one was. The 6th one was Archangel Michael. But he said the reason I didn't see him sooner was that my energy was so low. I was, we're all energy beings, really, vibrationally, spiritual beings. And my vibrations were so low that he couldn't connect with me. And so I didn't personally see him until several years later. And then I found out he was the 6th angel. But when they're coming from the other side, they bring their energy down to who you are to be able to connect with others, and then you're supposed to raise your energy up. That's what, like in meditation, I can see and get connected with them. So, but I couldn't do that when I was still sick. So anyway, I had a lot of different abuse. And so when I was trying suicide, I said, God, this isn't what you're supposed to do, but whatever's on the other side is better for me than what's going on. So the angel showed up, and I saw 5 of them, and Michael showed up later to tell me about it. And I was sent home by the angels, and he was still fuming when I walked through the door. He was still on his high horse. And so I was just in exhaustion, and I'd taken enough pills that I was kind of pretty sleepy, dozy. So yeah. I just laid down and went to sleep. And I was in this zombie place for a couple of years until I got to treatment, until he tried to kill me again. And so it was a matter of my having to come to the understanding. And it wouldn't have been, if it weren't for treatment, I wouldn't have found a spiritual path to get me out of the mental illness and the addictions and the abuse, because I didn't know. I'd gone to church all my life, but church didn't help me. I needed other answers that I wasn't getting. So
Yeah.
when I started being on a spiritual path, he got even more livid because he couldn't control me. I was starting to get my power back. And so
Mhm.
that's when I got the broken tailbone. That's when he, the car, we had a car situation where he was going to hit other cars and we die in a collision, head-on collision. That we missed 3 head-on collisions. At that point, I said, God, please help me. I really don't want to die. And
Mhm.
within days, I ended up in treatment because I had no answers. I had no way as a 3-year-old of how in the world. So when I was trying suicide, I felt helpless, hopeless, and cornered and no way out.
Yep, that I think are some great descriptive words for a lot of journeys that I've heard about.
Yeah. And I had no clue of how to get out of the mess. So in treatment, finding out the 12 steps, and I did not realize that when I said, God, please help me, that was basically the 3rd step. So when I got to treatment, I was very open-minded to whatever answers they had. A lot of people fight it, but this was the last door on the block. I needed something, and if
Right?
this didn't work, I was doomed. So I really embraced the 12 steps and have worked those steps constantly and daily, definitely, and to through my working the steps and finding out from treatment about how prescriptions are actually poison if they're mind and mood altering. When you're having a surgery, you need to have an anesthetic, but otherwise they're not necessary. In fact, I know they kept my mother in her mental illness. So because when you're taking a drug, you cannot be rational and you can't have emotions. And if you can't change your emotions, you can't get out of mental illness. It's taking me years to thaw out from being without any feelings because it wasn't safe to feel. And if I had a feeling, it was painful. It was not. I didn't know what love felt like. I didn't even know what love was, even though I went to church. And so it was when my stepdad was beating me with a 2x4. I said, well, what did I do? I was always trying to be perfect so I would get hurt again.
Yeah.
And so I said, what did I do this time? And he says, well, I'm only hitting you because because his comment was basically he was hitting me because he loved me. Well, that didn't. If love hurt, I didn't want to be hit. And he had this huge stick bigger than he was, 2x4, and so I didn't want to feel because it wasn't safe to feel. But you can't get out of mental illness if you can't change your feelings. So through the 4th step, 5th step, 6th step, and counseling that I went through, I started addressing the abuse, feeling the feelings the best I could, but I still stayed without feelings for many, many years. And it's been a very slow struggle to allow that love to finally replace the fear. I let go of all my fears. That wasn't as big a problem because I knew today they're an illusion and not real. But to replace it with love and grace is a step 7, and start to put love into my life. That was a huge transition to let go and let the love actually surface and come up. Yeah, after the fear's gone, you can let the love come up and start to treat. One day, well, mine's a pretty spiritual experience. One day I was meditating and God said, I'm the King of Kings and you're my daughter. It makes you a princess, and I want you to start treating yourself like one. And that was the biggest change because I was never treated that way growing up or in my marriage. I was
Mhm.
always oppressed and abused. So that was a huge message for me that it was okay to be nice to myself and treat myself in a better way, buy myself a little treat or whatever. So,
That I think is another excellent point. It is okay to be nice to ourselves. I mean, we are always our own worst critics, always. And especially people, self-care is that hot topic word right now. And a lot of times it can feel like being selfish because you're taking time for yourself or treating yourself, being nice to yourself. It is totally okay to do that, but it does have this can not does, but it can have this kind of bad connotation with it, this bad interpretation that we give to ourselves, saying, oh, I have to do this instead. I can't take care of myself because I need to go and do that, or I'm not worthy of taking care of myself. I'm not worth whatever this little treat is. But the truth is that you are, and you should take care of yourself.
Thank you. That's right. Well, I was so codependent that, in fact, the treatment that God put me in first was codependency treatment. And there they intervened me for the addictions. I used the alcohol and the pills to try to get through all the craziness.
Yeah.
And if I didn't do what my mother, my stepdad, or my husband wanted, then there was a punishment. And so I would give up myself to make them happy, so hopefully they wouldn't hurt me one more time.
Yeah.
So that's where to me, I was told it was selfish if I took care of myself.
Yeah.
That's what my mother actually said one day. Well, that's selfish. So anyway, because I finally had decided there was something I wanted to do for myself and that was high school. It took all that time to even figure out I could do something. And, oh, well, that was selfish. So anyway, I was never allowed to really have self-care in those days. I didn't even know that's what it was called. I went to a 12-step meeting one night, and they talked about selfishness versus self-care. That's the first time I ever even heard the word self-care. And by that time, I'd been around a little bit in recovery. So, my life was definitely down the road of a precarious road. And so I finally, after 5 years of recovery, see, I'm 3 years old, I finally got enough courage to follow through with the divorce.
Oh, good.
And he did not like that I was going to Al-Anon, because Al-Anon teaches you about relationships and healthiness in that, and how to have a healthy relationship and get your power back. Yeah. And he was threatened. And he would move out, and then I'd go to Al-Anon some more, and I'd get stronger, and he'd come back thinking we'd get together. But I was not the same person each time. Each time I was a little stronger than I'd been before. And so finally I just said, hey, you're not coming back again. And that's the short of a very long story. But
yes.
Then, of course, I could finally work on myself. And it took me about 15 years of being single on my own, where I was working, all the counseling and all the 12 steps and all the things I needed to do to get better so I could be a healthier person.
Yes.
And I painted angels because I saw angels from my experiences. I started painting pictures, and it turned out I started painting portraits of people's angels and my angels.
Oh, okay.
And I sell them by commission. And so and they're on my website. Some of them anyway. And so I started I was always the wallflower. I was never really one that got dated, so to speak. So I just paint all night because I wasn't out on a date. I just paint all night. And gradually, that was part of my self-care, I know today.
Yes.
And I bought myself a piano because when he left, he took the piano we had. And that was part of my self-care, that I could sit down and play the piano, and which I enjoyed because I'd been a flute player, but that kind of had gone out the window. So anyway, as I started getting healthier, I met a fellow. I changed enough through taking care of Marilyn and knowing how to handle life better through Al-Anon and ACA. I've done a lot of work in ACA.
What's ACA? I don't know that acronym.
Oh, Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. It's another 12-step program that it deals with the childhood abuse, which I have plenty of. So I need all the help I can get. And so I met this fellow in a spiritual group called Search for God, Edgar Casey readings. And Edgar Casey was a psychic in the 20th century, and his work's all documented in Virginia Beach in the States. And he's the first psychic that brought spirituality into the mainstream from the occult, I guess you'd say. It was considered witchcraft and all kinds of voodoo kind of things, but it wasn't. It was actually pure love. But the church, I know that's why how the book got written. I started getting research for, why is the church telling me what I need to know to get well? Because they're supposed to have all the answers. Why isn't medicine giving me the help I need to get well? Because you're supposed to go to the doctor, right? If I listened to my minister, I wouldn't be alive today. He told me to stay in the marriage and not get a divorce.
Oh.
And so I went to, when the anxiety from the abuse got so bad, I went to a psychiatrist. My mother was really big into doctors. You do what the doctor says. Well, that's how I got addicted to the prescriptions. And I was on death's door at that point. So I learned not to look outside for help and answers. And people with advice and authority are not the answers. The answers are in your heart. They're within. And that's how this all, in investigating how all these things came together. The first part of my book, A Spark of Truth, that's on my Amazon author page now, or on Amazon, it reveals why churches don't tell you the truth. They want you to look to them for their answers and not to the higher power of love inside your heart, the soul. The soul, I found out, is a piece of God, a Piece, piece of God. You are God within. And when you look to that, the love, that's where the love comes from. And you release all the barriers that have blocked it, from all the abuse and all the fear, the guilt and the shame. You release everything blocking that love, and you can come into mental health. I was declared sane. Can you believe it? People say nobody's ever been declared sane from.
I remember this part of our conversation last time.
Yeah, I was declared sane. And I know today that sane people come from their heart and not their head. And to get out of the fear-based life that we've been programmed in. And it all started, in my book, I give the history of how it started in 425 AD. And how they brought, Constantine wanted to have more control in the government. And there were a whole bunch of savior gods at that time in different countries. And he wanted to make it all unified. So he had control. So they had a big council to bring all this together so he would have the power. And they wrote the Nicene Creed. And in that creed, they distorted the truth. The Bible had been written earlier, and they took out the parts they didn't want that wouldn't go with their controlling people's mind thinking. And so then later down the path, they rewrote it again. Most people call them the Illuminati, or Cabal, or Deep State.
Yeah.
You get the picture. But they've rewritten the Bible several times to make sure that you stay in the doctrine of the church, of how they want you to think. And it's not from love, it's from keeping you in survival and oppressed and doing what they want for their benefit. And that's what's going on in our world right now, is where the light forces are actually in war with the dark evil forces, cleaning out that. The light is finally surfacing on the planet, and that's what the wars are about. As you follow the history, that's what the Spanish Inquisitions were all about, was to eliminate anybody that didn't follow the church doctrine, which is, doctrine is man-made, I found out. Creeds are man-made. They don't come from the source of who we are, the loving source. So when you're following the opposite of what is the truth, that's what's led our planet to the craziness we're at today. And so the God's forces are at work at this point, changing the dark to the light on the planet. So we will be restored. I know you're in Canada, but we've never been, the Constitution was taken over by these dark forces. And so the Constitution, which gave supposedly freedom and liberty to people, has not really been truthful for many years. And in the book, I follow through how that's changed through not only the countries and the people in charge, but they've changed instead of the royalty and the church being in charge of the people, now it's power and greed. But they just follow through with the same agenda to where we are today. And so the first half of the book is about the history and the problem and the solution, which is now being enforced and internationally. And then the second part of the book deals with how it's affected us currently in our lives and the lies we've been told all these years. And I expose the problems with education. They took over education. They've infiltrated our food. Most of our food is contaminated. If you didn't know, that's a big story. Most our life issues, we've been given wrong answers, even in counseling. Psychology is from the brain, spirituality is from the heart, and that's where the answers are. So they keep you in your brain. They keep you in your fear. And vaccinations and resolving dilemmas in our life so that we can, such as all the propaganda on the television is purported on purpose to keep people in fear. They don't want people to think for themselves. And so as you find out how medicine started was just a way to depopulate the population so that there's fewer people for the elite, rich cabal to dominate, and they wanted a slave state. If you pay taxes, that means that you're a slave. You're paying to the tyrant that's in charge. So all of that's going to change here coming up shortly. And because of my curiosity, I have the history that goes into the education, how it changed, and how the testing in the schools is to keep you left-brained instead of right-brained, out of your imagination, out of your creativity, out of your hunches and intuition, to think like the test tells you to think. And if you don't, you're a failure. There's no failure in life. And, even Edison, who created the electric light bulb, he had 999 tries and he wasn't a failure. He kept trying. And on the next try, he was able to say, I have now invented the electric light bulb. And his comment was, now I know 999 ways that don't work.
That's one of my favorite sayings, one of my favorite things. And actually, the book that I'm reviewing right now is called Hunted by Fire. Cannot think of the author off the top of my head right now. But there's this little motivational speech that the one innovator guy is giving to the kids who are about to go on stage to show their invention. And that's what it was. You know what? What's the worst thing that'll happen right now? Your thing doesn't work. Okay, so you go back home and you try again later. It's not about if you win today, because it was like a competition. It's not about what you win. If you win today, if you fail, that's okay. You can pick yourself up and try again, and you just keep trying until you succeed.
Exactly. So what we've done in our lives is we've believed all the lies, and they've been hidden from us and withheld from us, and on purpose, because then we're better. I call us sheeple. People don't really ask questions. They don't question what they're being told. When I was a teacher, I allowed the kids to create. We had little activities, like if we were studying the Indians in Southwest the states. We made little Navajo. We made our little woven blankets. We made our pebbles out of sugar cubes. I don't even think they have sugar cubes anymore. But anyway, we had creative type activities. We painted pictures of the weather cycle. That kind. All they do now is study for a test. There's no creativity. There's no thinking. I would have the kids bring their shells from the beach from their summer vacation, and we learned about mollusks. We learned about clams and crabs and all the stuff that you have at the beach. And then I'd have them write their own little book, so they learned what a title page is, and etc. So, and different kinds of stories, that they put in their books, and their stories from the beach. And so they learned about how to put a book together, the format and so forth, and how it was their own stories they made up out of their own imagination.
Yeah.
the forces that have been on top of us don't want you to imagine, because then you might become a leader and lead people out of their control. So they want good little workers, and that's what one of the quotes from Rockefeller was, that I don't want people to be educated. I'm paraphrasing. I want workers. And so people have been trained to take a job, make a living, and pay your taxes. And guess where the taxes go? So that goes to the elite, and they perpetuate war because they make more money off of wars than they sell to both sides of the war. That's why we've had so many wars. We have been fed a line of they're the enemy. No, we're all one in spirit of God's love. There's no enemy.
So, okay, so you're talking about all of these tons of different things in your book.
Right.
And it's on Amazon now. This is a newly published book. I feel like you talked about a different one last time.
I did. That was called Finding Reality Beyond Fear. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I'm just making sure I got everything right. I talked to so many people. When did this one come out?
A couple weeks ago.
Oh, so it's new.
It's brand new. We're at a time where it's time for people to wake up to the lies that we've been told and the misinformation and their power over us, that we can regain our sovereignty. We are, because we're children of a spiritual creation, a creator, we were created sovereign. We have our own power within us, and we don't have to be told how to think. We don't have to be told what to do, what jobs we should have, so we bring the taxes home. That's the problem with IQ tests. I was a teacher and I'm now retired, obviously. And there were tests, only 4 tests in the career of a child at that time, when they were grade school, junior high school. Anyway, there were like 3 or 4 tests, very few. And we judged how they made individual progress. Well, now, because they're trying so hard to make sure everybody is programmed, there's a test every year in the school districts, in the states anyway. And the kids, they don't know how to create. They don't know how. They aren't given the time and opportunity to do that. It's, if you pass the test, then you can move on, and we'll rub it into your brain until you do pass the test, right? They think like we want you to think. And so people have been led down a path that doesn't produce and help them to be a better person. IQ tests do not give a student the ability to show their gifts and talents. It's all about a head trip. And so they don't have a balanced life. That's insanity.
So if anybody has found this quite interesting, they're going to go to Amazon, I believe you said is where the book is.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it called again?
A Spark of Truth by Marilyn Redmond. And I have a blog, and I have a website, and I have a lot of YouTubes. Thanks to your graciously having me on. This will be on there too. And people need to hear the truth, that we've been hogwashed, we've been lied to, our real lives have been stolen from us for somebody else to benefit. And the point is, we're going to move back into that. I have a lot of spiritual quotes in my book of what's coming and how much better it's going to be in education. And I didn't put in the med beds in the book, but we're actually coming into a place where we won't have medicine like it used to be, because it was all to make a profit for Rockefeller. Why do you have a pill? Because you can patent it and make money off of it, instead of using natural herb or healthy ways to think. Let's just keep them drugged, right? And then,
well, I will agree to disagree. Which is why I like the show, is that we can all share our own journeys and opinions. I like my medicine that I take. It makes my life much better for me anyways.
Well, I shouldn't generalize completely, because there are medications that are indicated and necessary, but they're overprescribed. Let's put it that way.
Okay, I can get on that boat that there are definitely certain medications that are overprescribed
My
and
mother,
very addictive.
oh, my mother was addicted to her mental illness pills, I know. And they put her through shock treatment for her mental illness. And yeah, and there's much, when you really get honest. I read a book, People of the Lie, by Dr. Scott Peck, and he said mental illness is not being totally honest with yourself. And I have no secrets today. I'm try to be as open as I can about all of these things. I don't pretend to be different than I am. You get the whole ugly picture. And because if you have secrets or fear or guilt or shame, all that blocks love. And if you're living in love, you can't be sick. So every time I've released, through the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth steps of the 12-step programs or counseling or however you want to drop your garbage, if you get rid of all of it and clean it all out, it leaves a channel for the love to come in and fill you. And you were created in perfection of God. So every morning I say, I accept the perfect love of God and know I'm dearly loved. I was looking for love in all the wrong places.
And I definitely think that that is a common story for a lot of people. So I know you said that you have a website. Is there any other places that people can follow you to see what else it is that you're working on?
Well, my Facebook page is going to be changing and bringing it up to date here shortly. But basically, my website and Amazon and my blog, and I do write a monthly column for a newspaper in England called the Sussex Newspapers, which is on the internet. And it's all about helping people to find the real person inside. It's all about spiritual awakening and moving into this new consciousness. See, we have been, if you understand, Tesla said, if you want to understand the universe, it's all about energy, vibration, and frequency. So everything I do is to help people bring up their vibrations, their low vibrations from fear, guilt, shame, jealousy, whatever those negative feelings are, which are vibrating at a low consciousness, which many times is what our mental illness is. If you bring your consciousness, your energy of creation inside of you up to a higher vibration, and you have that higher frequency running your life, you're running it from love instead of from fear. And that's what we're all trying to achieve. And so all my work, all my books are various versions of how do I get into a higher consciousness where I'm a love-based person instead of a fear-based person.
Very nice. So if you want to learn more, if something Marilyn has said is like really sparks some interest, you know where to go find her. We're going to throw the links down in the description, of course. And thank you for being on the show yet again. And so glad that you have your new book out. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Well, it's real exciting because not everybody is open to receiving this message, but I hope that it might put a little spark in there that maybe I'm curious enough to check it out. And when we check it out and discover, what's really, our media and propaganda has really masked what is the real truth of what's going on in our lives. Government wise, the banking system is going to change. All these things are going to change so that we will not be in the old predicaments of the past and be enslaved to the government involved or the religions or whatever. We'll be able to think for ourselves and have our own life as we were designed to have in love.
Yes. And that is why I love this show so much, right? We get to hear people's stories from all over the world, and everybody is unique and different. So, there's going to be somebody out there that's going to spark with one person, not with another person, but maybe with the next person. I love it. I love that we have this array of information, of journeys, of life, of experiences that we can just share. And everybody that's come on the show has been amazing, sharing so very openly. So, I appreciate that as the host for sure. I'm sure the listeners do, because without the amazing guests that we have, there would be no show. And I might cry a little bit.
As always, thank you so much for the amazing guests that we have on the show. Be sure to check out their links down in the description below. If you want to support the channel, go ahead and check out our merch store. We've got some very cool things on there. That's my favorite. Sorry, I'm busy ending the stigma. But there's some other very cool designs. 10% of the proceeds always goes back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at RB Media because we have some great new shows coming up and you never want to miss any of those episodes. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly. Bye!